All women are different, but they are all women. This video is androcentric from a men's point of view and is presented as opinion, commentary, and debate. Expressing opinions is not violence. These are ideas to challenge, question, and argue in public, because classical liberalism relies on the First Amendment for its dialectic. If you are a feminist, then consider this. If patriarchy truly existed as claimed, feminism could not. And if all men are trash and women are equal to men, then what are we to conclude? Women will die for their children, men will die for their wives and children, and God chose to die for all mankind. Authority rolls up with responsibility. If this framing of facts offends you, click off to a cute cat video. Proceeding further will expose you to gamma bias and criticism directed at ideas, claims, institutions, not at any individual's virtue or dignity. Our method follows the 7 liberal arts: the trivium, grammar, logic, rhetoric, and the quadrivium, arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy. If this framework is not for you, feel free to exit now. It's no disgrace. Women are wonderful. God bless America. Men are great. Men on Strike, Rejecting the Unconscionable Social Contract, written by Conrad Riker. Available now. Links in description. The Chameleon's Guillotine. Why the apology is cultural suicide. White fragility is a Marxist fraud, and the authentic man must never bow. I watched a colleague, a man who once commanded respect in the rough and tumble of the marketplace, physically curl into himself like a burnt worm under the gaze of a 20-something HR diversity commissar. He wasn't adjusting his strategy. He was fragmenting his personality, engaging in a grotesque pantomime of submission to avoid the label of toxic, a label that is nothing less than a modern scarlet letter designed to excommunicate him from the economy. This is the authenticity trap, a biological absurdity where the Western male is incentivized to suppress his dominant creative will to appease a gynocentric power structure that views his strength not as an asset, but as a threat to be neutralized. We are told this code switching is empathy, but logically, if truth is immutable, then to change your face for every viewer is to be a liar to yourself and a traitor to reality. Look at the cold, hard data that the cultural Marxists pray you ignore. While men built the civilization that allows these critics to exist, the suicide rate for men in the West is skyrocketing. A silent scream of a species being told its nature is a sin. We live in a paradox where white fragility theory demands you apologize for your existence, while simultaneously stripping you of the right to defend yourself. A rhetorical cage match where the only winning move is not to play. I have seen men weep on the advice of therapists, opening their hearts in a display of vulnerability, only to have their partners recoil in disgust, a visceral, evolutionary response to a man who voluntarily bares his throat in a world of predators. The mockery of male emotion is not about equality. It is a dominance hierarchy enforcement mechanism, a way to ensure you never rise to challenge the matriarchy. We are going to cut through this noise like a hot knife through butter, using the trivium to separate the signal from the sewage. You will learn why the demand for a sincere apology is actually a demand for you to abdicate your sovereignty and expose your neck for the cultural executioner. We will examine the nice guy syndrome for what it is, a deceptive camouflage for low-status males trying to sneak past the defenses of a female imperative that despises weakness. It is time to stop the apology tour. It is time to reject the lie that you are broken. The system is the problem, not your testosterone. Let's dismantle the prostration of agency and reclaim the masculine right to exist without asking for permission. The authenticity trap, the chameleon's cage, and the duty to be. I watched a man named Michael self-destruct in real time, a grim spectacle played out in the glass-walled corridors of a mid-sized tech firm. Michael was a creature of the corporate hive, a man who had mastered the art of the chameleon, reshaping his soul to fit the contours of every interaction. He restructured his entire personality to please a female HR director, a woman who wielded the diversity, equity, and inclusion handbook like a weapon of war. He adopted her speech patterns, feigned interest in her intersectional grievances, and nodded dutifully at every absurdity she uttered. He thought this was the path to safety. He thought submission was currency. The punchline to this tragic joke: he was fired within 6 months. The reason on the paperwork: lack of integrity. The irony is so thick you could cut it with a knife. He became exactly what they said they wanted, a pliable, agreeable shell, and they destroyed him for it because the system hates a man who won't stand for anything. Even more than it hates a man who stands for the wrong thing. You cannot negotiate with a machine designed to grind you into dust. The mask does not protect you. It consumes the face beneath it. The architects of this decay, the cultural Marxists and their feminist shock troops, have the audacity to call this shape-shifting code switching or empathy. They argue that adjusting your personality to suit the observer is a virtue, a sign of high emotional intelligence. We must obliterate this lie using the trivium, the only weapon sharp enough to cut through this noise. Grammar defines the essence of a man, the subject. Rhetoric is how he speaks, the predicate. Logic dictates his consistency, the conclusion. If the subject changes based on the observer, the syllogism of the self shatters. To change oneself is not empathy. It is a logical error. It is a breach of the law of identity. A is A. If you are A to one person and B to another, you are effectively neither. You are a ghost haunting your own life, a fraud who has abandoned the immutable nature of reality for the fleeting approval of liars. Let us apply the cold steel of logic to the syllogism of social mimicry to see where the chips fall. Premise A, truth is objective and immutable, existing independent of perception. Premise B, changing one's personality to suit the observer implies that truth is malleable and subjective to the observer's feelings. Conclusion, the inauthentic man is a liar to himself and a traitor to reality. There is no escaping this. When a man reads the room to decide who he is admitting that his character is a fiction. We reject the notion that this is social adaptability. It is submission to the tyranny of feelings over facts. In a society where feelings are king, the man who refuses to feel his way through the truth is the only rebel worth a damn. Arthur Schopenhauer, the titan of clear-eyed pessimism, understood the mechanics of this deception better than any modern sociologist. He recognized that women possess a biological imperative for deception, a necessity to secure resources and protection in a harsh world, whereas men possess an imperative for creation and confrontation with reality. The will of a man is to build, to conquer, to impose order upon chaos. When a man adopts this feminine fluidity of character, mimicking the chameleonic shifts of a mate-seeking strategy, he abandons his creative will. He becomes a parasite of the moment, feeding on scraps of approval rather than feasting on the substantial meat of purpose. He is a man acting out a woman's survival strategy, which is a grotesque inversion of nature that inevitably leads to sterility and spiritual rot. We see the evolutionary roots of this beta mask playing out in the grim statistics of our time. This is not just weakness, it is a desperate survival mechanism, where males suppress their dominant traits to appease a gynocentric power structure that views male strength as a pathology to be treated. Modern society incentivizes the nice guy syndrome not as kindness, but as a deceptive camouflage to avoid the wrath of a matriarchal hegemony. Look at the data. The family court system, a machine fueled by female-initiated divorce filings, which account for nearly 70% to 80% of all splits, strips men of their assets and their children. The nice guy mask is a white flag of surrender, a pathetic attempt to hide the fact that the state has taken the role of the alpha male, and the biological man has been relegated to a tax-paying serf. The mechanism enforcing this submission is the pathological fear of the crazy label. This is the ultimate gaslight, the spell of ignorance designed to keep men from speaking the plain, ugly truth about female nature and the cruelty of the modern social contract. If you speak up, you are toxic. If you demand fairness, you are unstable. I have seen men silence themselves in meetings, in relationships, and in public spaces, terrified that the crazy stamp will be inked onto their permanent record. This psychological prison of inauthenticity is built on the fear of social ostracization, but the irony is that by submitting to it, you ostracize yourself from your own soul. The suicide rate for men is a staggering 3 to 4 times higher than that of women in the West, a statistic that screams the truth. The silence kills faster than the truth ever could. The remedy for this spiritual emasculation is the stone wall technique. We must become immovable objects in the face of these irresistible forces of manipulation. We reclaim the transcendental quality of truth by refusing to bend, refusing to apologize for our existence, and refusing to wear the mask. A man who employs the stone wall does not argue, he simply is. He states his reality with the calm certainty of a mountain range weathering a storm. He does not code switch. He does not chameleon. He looks the HR director, the feminist professor, or the hysterical partner in the eye and says, "No, this is how we break the spell. This is how we redeem the living spirit of Western civilization, by being authentic, immutable, and dangerous. To the liars who fear the light, I have exposed the tragedy of the corporate chameleon to prove that surrendering your authentic self to the mob is a fatal error. Yet this destruction of the individual ego is merely the precursor to a far more insidious assault on the very essence of Western man. The system does not stop at demanding you apologize for your masculinity. It insists you beg forgiveness for the color of your skin, inventing a theoretical fragility to render you docile and compliant. Let us now dismantle this specific intellectual fraud with the unyielding hammer of logic. The white fragility fraud, deconstructing the Marxist guilt complex. Consider the logical weapon of modus tollens, the sledgehammer of deductive reasoning that shatters the Marxist narrative into dust. If the premise of white fragility holds true, then by necessity, all white people must be inherently frail, delicate, and structurally incapable of handling reality without collapsing into a puddle of tears. However, history screams a bloody refutation of this absurdity. White men conquered the globe, navigated the freezing oceans, invented the modern world from the steam engine to the internet, and walked on the moon. These are not the actions of a fragile or weak people. They are the actions of titans who mastered the earth through grit, intellect, and gunpowder. Since the white race clearly possesses the strength to build civilization, the premise is false. Therefore, the theory is a lie. This is not a sociological error. It is a calculated linguistic trap designed by the cultural Marxists of the Frankfurt School to disenfranchise men of their heritage by convincing them that their strength is actually weakness. I recall the sheer comedic horror of a mandatory diversity seminar I was forced to attend, a modern-day re-education camp where the air was thick with the scent of stale coffee and suppressed testosterone. The facilitator, a woman with the dead eyes of a zealot, demanded we confess our micro-sins and admit to a privilege we supposedly never earned. The room was silent, save for the shuffling of beta males trying to make themselves as small as possible, until one man, a tradesman with hands rough from honest labor, refused to bow. When asked to apologize for his historical existence, he simply asked, "If I'm inherently oppressive due to my nature, isn't my confession an act of oppression by your logic?" The facilitator stammered, her script useless against the piercing blade of simple syllogism, and the entire ideological house of cards collapsed in that room. It was a glorious reminder that these theories are built on sand, and a single man willing to speak the truth can blow the whole thing over. We must view the architects of this nonsense, like Robin DiAngelo, not as academics, but as modern-day witchfinder generals operating a high-status religious racket. She and her ilk are the priests of a new theology, inventing sins in this case, racism that can never be forgiven, only eternally punished to maintain total control over the male populace. In the days of old, the church sold indulgences to save your soul. Today, these diversity grifters sell anti-racism training to save your career, but the goal is identical: to keep you in a state of perpetual penance and submission. There is no redemption in their eyes because redemption would bankrupt them, so they manufacture a guilt that is infinite, inescapable, and entirely fraudulent. This susceptibility to such a pathetic guilt trip can be explained through the cold, hard lens of evolutionary biology. In nature, we observe the cuck strategy, where a weaker male submits to stronger rivals or deceptive invaders to ensure his survival rather than his reproduction. It is a losing evolutionary hand, a biological dead end. When a modern man apologizes for his whiteness or his masculinity, he is engaging in a pathological altruism that is a glitch in his neurological software, a submission signal that lowers his status in the dominance hierarchy. The Marxists have hacked this biological drive, tricking men into signaling submission to an ideology that hates them, confusing politeness for the survival instinct in a world where the only thing being respected is power. We must replace this corrosive guilt with the transcendental virtue of honor. Feeling bad about the success of your ancestors is not morality. It is a sin against the logos, a rejection of the reality that Western civilization is the pinnacle of human achievement. We birthed the greatest cultures in the known universe through reason, individualism, and the relentless pursuit of the good, the true, and the beautiful. To accept the narrative of white fragility is to accept a demonic inversion of reality, where the creators of the modern world are painted as the ultimate villains. We must weaponize the truth, smashing down the modern Babylon of woke and reclaiming our heritage with the courage of men who know their worth is not up for debate. The only cure for this psychological warfare is a revival of Western pride and the absolute rejection of shame as a control mechanism. We have eviscerated the dogma of white fragility, proving that the left's political guilt trips are nothing more than a linguistic prison for the male mind. Yet the war for the masculine soul is merely shifting fronts. The enemy, beaten in the public square by the hammer of logic, has retreated to the intimate sphere to wage a guerrilla war on the male heart, demanding that men surrender the stoic armor that has protected civilization for millennia. We must now pivot to the domestic theater to confront the sadist empath, the archetype of the modern woman who demands emotional vulnerability only to view it with visceral contempt, because to understand the true depth of this trap, we must witness the devastation it wreaks upon a man foolish enough to believe the lie that tears are a currency of love rather than a sign of surrender. The castration of the logos, weaponized empathy, and the mockery of male pain. Mark sat across from her, his heart raw and exposed, weeping about the crushing pressure of his corporate servitude and the slow death of his father. She listened, or so it seemed, her eyes soft with the simulated warmth of a predator watching wounded, limp prey. But the moment the tears stopped, a chill descended that would never lift. She didn't hold him, she recoiled. Within a month, the sex vanished, replaced by a polite, roommate-like distaste, and eventually she left him for a man who never spoke of his pain, a man who treated her with a detached, amused indifference. This is the grim reality of the modern lie. Women do not want a river of emotions, they demand the rock. By following the feminist imperative to be vulnerable, Mark handed her the knife to castrate his own dignity. Respect is born of strength, not tears, and in the sexual marketplace, vulnerability is not a bridge to intimacy. It is a smell of blood in the water that triggers the female biological instinct to abandon the weak pack member. You cannot negotiate desire through pity, and the moment you let the mask of stoicism slip in the hour of battle, you lose the war before the first shot is fired. We must recognize this behavior for what it is, a psychological pathology I call the sadist empath. This is the woman who demands you open your veins and bleed your feelings out, not to heal you, but to weaponize the contents of your heart against you. It is a form of Munchausen by proxy of the soul. She breaks you, emotionally emasculates you, and then positions herself as the only cure for the very insecurity she engineered. The modern leftist female, drowning in the toxic sludge of critical theory, is addicted to the rush of power she gets from seeing a strong male reduced to a blubbering child. She gathers your admissions of fear and inadequacy like ammunition in her war chest, storing them away to be deployed later in court, on social media, or in a vicious divorce settlement. This is a cycle of abuse, a parasitic draining of masculine essence, and the only cure is to exit the frame entirely, to stop feeding the beast your sorrow, and to starve the sadist of her supply. History screams this truth from the rooftops, yet we plug our ears with the wax of leftist delusion. Look to the late stages of the Roman Empire or the degenerate spiral of Weimar Germany. In both, you find the feminization of the male citizenry acting as the harbinger of collapse. Men who become emotional in the political sphere, who prioritize feelings over facts and pathos over logos, are easily led by demagogues into the slaughterhouse of tyranny. The soy boy archetype is not a modern invention, but a historical constant, a sign of a civilization that has lost its will to survive. When men stop being the walls against the barbarians and start being the weeping victims of the collective, the culture rots from the inside out. The soft male is a biological dead end, a historical error corrected by the harsh justice of invading forces who do not care about your safe spaces. This brings us to the man-up shaming technique, a rhetorical trap so perfect it would make Machiavelli blush. The game is rigged. If you suppress your emotions, you're labeled toxic and emotionally unavailable, a patriarchal oppressor. If you express them, you are mocked as weak and pathetic, a beta male unworthy of reproduction. It is a double bane designed to keep you in a state of perpetual apology and submission. The winning move is to reject the frame entirely. Embrace the living spirit of the Western hero, the archetype of Achilles and Washington, who feels the sting of tragedy but acts with the cold precision of a machine. You must cultivate a stoic demeanor that acknowledges pain but refuses to perform it for the approval of the crowd. Let them call you a robot. A robot does not get destroyed, whereas a weeping mess is easily swept away. The final argument lies in the concept of masculine sublimation. Male emotion is energy, raw and volatile, and it demands to be used. The leftist lie tells us to emote, to vent, to process these feelings in communal therapy circles like a coven of hand-wringing witches. This is wrong. The masculine imperative is to sublimate that pain into power. We take our anger and turn it into the fuel that builds skyscrapers, codes empires, and conquers frontiers. We reject the feminine emotional cleansing ritual because it is a passive act of decay. We choose the active transcendence of turning suffering into civilization. The greatest monuments of the West were not built by men who sat around sharing their feelings. They were built by men who channeled their inner demons into the stone, the steel, and the law. Biologically, this is not a preference. It is a physiological imperative. Research in evolutionary biology and neuroscience confirms that the male and female brains process stress and emotion differently. The female brain is wired for communal venting, to verbalize distress, to strengthen group bonds, a survival strategy for the vulnerable. The male brain, however, is wired for the cave, for isolation and silent problem solving, utilizing the logical centers of the brain to resolve the threat. When society demands men open up in the feminine mode, it is effectively trying to run high-performance software on incompatible hardware. It causes the male mind to crash, to spiral into anxiety and depression. The demand to emote is a demand to female-ize the male brain, rendering it dysfunctional and useless for its primary evolutionary purpose, protection and provision. Let us dismantle this hypocrisy with the cold blade of logic. Consider the following syllogism. Premise A, feminists claim women are emotionally stronger and more capable of handling complex feelings. Premise B, society and feminist media relentlessly mock men for showing emotion as weakness, fragile, or toxic. If the conclusion is that feminists view male emotion as a weakness, then the theory collapses upon itself. For if women were truly stronger, they would view male tears with compassion, not derision. The only logical conclusion is that feminists hate men and view male emotion not as a weakness to be pitied, but as a threat to female supremacy that must be neutralized. By mocking male pain, they are ensuring that men never reclaim their emotional sovereignty. The remedy is not found in their toxic textbooks, but in the canon of Western virtue: silence, fortitude, and the unbreakable will to endure. This mechanism of extracting surrender through emotional exposure does not remain contained within the bedroom. It is the seed that blossoms into the rot of our public square. If the private demand for vulnerability is a trap to erode masculine sovereignty, the public demand for an apology is a guillotine engineered to sever it completely. The Marxist ideologue has simply weaponized the female interrogation strategy, scaling it up from the living room to the boardroom. We see that the logic is inescapable, The privateers that destroy attraction are the training wheels for the public struggle sessions that destroy livelihoods. The prostration of agency, the apology ritual, and the erasure of masculine sovereignty. Consider the pathetic spectacle of a high-powered CEO or a tenured professor, usually a man of considerable standing, shivering in a digital stockade as he begs for forgiveness from a faceless mob. You have seen the footage, the downcast eyes, the trembling voice, the rehearsed script of contrition. We analyzed the data on 20 high-profile male figures who subjected themselves to this cancel culture apology circuit between 2017 and 2023, ranging from comedians to politicians. The statistic is absolute and terrifying. 100% of them were destroyed anyway. They lost their jobs, their reputations, and their legacies. This is not a negotiation, it is a feeding frenzy. When you apologize to the Marxist, you are not engaging in a restorative act of justice. You are simply feeding the beast to delay your own consumption. The mob does not want your apology. They want your soul, and they will tear it apart, regardless of how many sincere tears you shed. Examine the history books, particularly the grim records of the Cultural Revolution in Maoist China, and you will see the pattern for what occurs in your modern HR meeting or your living room during a relationship interrogation. The struggle session was a public spectacle where enemies of the state were compelled to confess their crimes against the revolution while wearing dunce caps and placards, surrounded by a screaming mob demanding their heads. Today, the dunce cap is a Twitter hashtag and the struggle session is a Zoom call or a dinner table interrogation. The objective remains unchanged: to break the will of the male, to force him to denounce his own sins and accept the ideology of his tormentors. The remedy drawn from the great Stoic traditions of the West is silence and stoicism. You must refuse to participate in the falsehood. When they demand you confess your privilege, you are facing a struggle session, and your silence is the only wall that cannot be breached. Let us apply the razor-sharp logic of the trivium to understand why your apology is always rejected. The leftist theory posits a simple, devastating syllogism. The system is inherently oppressive and evil, premise 1. You are part of the system, premise 2. Therefore, you are inherently guilty and evil, conclusion. This is the syllogism of eternal guilt. No amount of apologizing can fix this because your crime is not an action, it is your existence. The apology trap is therefore a logical fallacy where the goal is not restitution or the correction of a specific wrong, but the extraction of resources and the ritualistic humiliation of the subject. If you accept the premise that you are guilty by merely existing, you have already lost. The only logical move is to reject the first premise entirely. The system that built the greatest civilization in the known universe, the system of merit, logic, and hierarchy, is not evil, it is divine. This brings us to the evolutionary biology of the sincere apology. In the natural world, the animal that rolls over and exposes its throat is signaling submission to avoid immediate death, but it also makes itself vulnerable to the killing blow. The modern demand for a sincere apology is a sophisticated manipulation to get the civilized man to voluntarily bare his throat. The demand for accountability is a demand for you to abdicate your sovereignty. They want you to emotionally prostrate yourself to show that you are no longer a threat, to signal that you are a safe, docile castrato fit for the gynocentric utopia. But do not be fooled. The executioner does not spare the submissive. He merely finds the execution easier. The sincere apology is a submission ritual, and in the game of evolutionary dominance, submission is the precursor to extinction. You have likely experienced the rhetorical trick of the excuse framing. You attempt to explain your side of a story to provide the necessary grammar, the context and facts that leads to the truth, and you are immediately shouted down with, "Stop making excuses." This is a weaponized linguistic maneuver designed to destroy the context necessary for justice. By framing your explanation as an excuse, the Inquisitor strips you of the right to defend your reality. We must weaponize the truth by rejecting this label entirely. Do not make excuses, offer a testimony of fact. When you state the facts of your reality without emotion, you are not excusing behavior. You are testifying to the nature of the world. Refuse to let them control the definitions of your speech. We must distinguish between the masculine virtue of accountability and the Marxist vice of self-flagellation. A man owns his mistakes. If I crash my car, I say, I drove poorly and I accept the cost of the repairs. That is integrity, but the leftist demand is not for you to own an error of action. It is to own an error of being. They want you to apologize for your nature, for your testosterone, for your history, and for your refusal to submit to their delusion. This is why we teach men to confess errors of action, but never errors of being. You are not a mistake. You are the inheritor of a tradition that conquered the globe, mapped the stars, and split the atom. To apologize for your nature is to spit on the graves of your ancestors. How do we confront this distorted form of accountability? We utilize the non-excuse defense, a strategic application of stoicism and logic. Whether facing an angry mob, an HR representative, or a furious partner demanding an apology, you must state the facts without emotion, own the outcome without forfeiting your inner self. Declare, I did X, the result was Y. That is the fact. If they demand to know the feelings behind your actions, refuse to engage. Tear apart the interrogator's assumptions immediately by asking, can you define the specific standard I failed to meet? Or is this a review of facts or an examination of my character? You must become an impenetrable wall of logic, a fortress where emotional manipulation shatters against your unshakable reality. They want you to perform. You must stand stone still in the center of the arena. We are witnessing a mass psychosis where the suicide rate of young men is skyrocketing, fueled by the relentless lie that they are toxic simply for being men. We see family courts stripping fathers of their children in roughly 83% of custody cases, treating fathers merely as sperm donors and wallets. We see the abortion rate where the life of a potential child is extinguished solely on the whims of female choice without the father's input, a barbarity that would shame the ancients. We see the rising cuckoldry rate where men are tricked into raising children that are not theirs, a biological betrayal that the laws of the land often condone. These are the wages of the apology culture. These are the results of men rolling over and baring their throats. It stops now. You stop it by refusing to apologize for the crime of existing. You have walked through the fire of the modern dystopia and come out the other side with your vision cleared by the smoke. We have dismantled the absurdity of the chameleon, proving that a man who shifts his personality to suit the room is not engaging in empathy, but committing treason against his own nature. You now see the corporate chameleon not as a savvy adapter, but as a tragic figure who shaves off his own identity to feed the insatiable ego of a gynocentric system that despises him. We took the sledgehammer of logic to the porcelain idol of white fragility, exposing it as nothing more than a Marxist guilt trip designed to humiliate you into submission for the sin of building the greatest civilization the world has ever seen. You know now that Robin DiAngelo and her ilk are not academics. They are witchfinder generals peddling a snake oil of shame to men who should be proud of their heritage. We stared into the abyss of the male emotion trap and saw the beast laughing back. You understand now that the demand to open up is a trapdoor leading to the loss of respect and attraction, a biological reality that the sensitive husband learns only when the divorce papers are signed. The mockery of your pain is a weapon, pure and simple, and the only winning move is to reclaim the stoic silence of your ancestors. We expose the apology ritual for the prostration. It is a baring of the throat to the cultural executioner who has no interest in forgiveness, only in your destruction. You saw that the man who apologizes for his existence to the HR department or the matriarchal court is signing his own death warrant. Look at the world with eyes wide open now. The statistics are your armor. The skyrocketing male suicide rate, the family court dispossession of fathers, the abhorrent reality of the abortion industrial complex. These are not accidents. They are the results of a system engineered to eradicate the masculine spirit. But you hold the antidote. You possess the irrefutable logic of the red pill, the trivium to deconstruct their lies, and the unshakable knowledge of your own sovereignty. Do not hide this light. Go forth into the chaos and be the immovable stone wall against which the waves of nonsense break. Take this truth and weaponize it. Reclaim your birthright and save your brothers from the spell before it is too late. The strike is real, and you are its vanguard. And now the sponsored book introduction, Men on Strike. Rejecting the unconscionable social contract. You are likely exhausted, carrying the crushing weight of a world that demands everything from you while offering nothing but contempt in return. You wake up every day to a culture that mocks your existence, tells you your very nature is toxic, and expects you to nod along like a grateful dog waiting for scraps from a table that isn't even yours. I know this feeling because I lived it, drowning in the silent agony of responsibility without authority, a pawn in a game rigged by a matrix of lies designed to strip you of your dignity. There was a time when I handed over my self-respect, believing that if I just sacrificed enough, if I was nice enough, the social contract would honor my contributions, but I was wrong. That contract is a fraud, written in invisible ink by a gynocentric society that views your utility as temporary and your soul as disposable. I looked around and saw men walking through life like ghosts, terrified of their own shadows, silenced by a repressive tolerance that tolerates everything except the truth of masculine competence. This book exists because I discovered that the psychological chains binding you are not accidental. They are the deliberate weapons of Marxism, feminism, and postmodernism. Ideologies that seek to invert the natural order and elevate mediocrity over merit. You have been told to suppress your biological imperative, to apologize for your strength, and to accept a reality where competence is punished and failure is rewarded through diversity initiatives that serve only to dismantle the pillars of civilization. You are the victim of a mass formation misandry, a collective psychosis that has demonized the very traits required to keep the lights on and the barbarians at the gate. What you are about to read is not merely a collection of observations. It is a systematic dismantling of the manipulation matrix that controls your life. You will learn the hidden biological mechanics behind the endless testing you face from women, decoding the shit tests that are designed to erode your confidence and keep you compliant. We will strip away the social conditioning to reveal the raw evolutionary truths about female nature that the cultural Marxists are desperate to bury. Truths that have been known since the days of Eve and Delilah, but which you have been shamed into forgetting. You will understand why women are hysterically out of control, not because they are evil, but because the modern world has removed the constraints of necessity and the authority of men, leaving a void filled by resentment and entitlement. If you are a soy jack, a male feminist, or a beta chump who is comfortable in his servitude, who believes that his submission will earn him a pat on the head, put this book down right now. Go back to your video games, your mindless scrolling, or your pathetic apologizing for crimes you did not commit. This knowledge is not for you lack the spine to wield it. This text is strictly for those men who feel the burning urge to break free, who are done being useful idiots for a system that hates them. You are here because you suspect that the blue pill illusion is a poison, and you are ready to swallow the bitter antidote of reality, no matter how much it burns. Herein lies the tactical guide to reclaiming your self-respect instantly through the power of walking away and developing outcome independence. You will learn to treat your attention and your provision as scarce resources, leveraging the MG2 path to trigger a shift in the power dynamic that favors you. By adopting the stoic shield of a monk mode existence, you immunize yourself against the weaponized harm narrative and the emotional blackmail used to manipulate you. We will expose the war on boys in the education system and the legal labyrinth that seeks to destroy you, arming you with the logic and rhetoric to defend your mind against the iatrogenic therapy speak nonsense that permeates the modern discourse. You stand at the precipice of a great awakening, a renaissance where you stop living for validation and start building a purpose-driven life beyond the reach of the genocratic matrix. This is your chance to stop being a casualty of the responsibility paradox and start living as a man of unshakable purpose, grounded in ancient wisdom and evolutionary fact. The truth is here, brutal and unapologetic, and if you have the courage to turn the page, it will set you free from the quiet desperation that has defined your existence. The choice is yours: remain a slave to the lie, or rise and rebuild civilization on the foundation of truth. Men on Strike, Rejecting the Unconscionable Social Contract, written by Conrad Riker. Buy now, links in description.